FDA regulatory documentation generation, which is, it's a hard problem for them to solve, but you can't see the picture from inside the frame, so they can't like think about how AI is gonna fix this. So I come in and right on the call, I'm like, imagine if you will, you end up with 1,200 documents, 80% is generated with the help of AI. AI, as a judge, will tell you where it needs human input, and you now end up with 80-20 rule, 80% of your time now being spent on other things. But it is in the building, and it can be super small. Like this is document intelligence, not new, 20, 30 years old, but showing them document intelligence, showing them content intelligence. ChatGPT demos are a bit overrated, I think now. I think every executive is starting to see those. So you want to listen to what they say and then be able to build. This is the art of solution architecture, being able to think on the fly and develop solutions in real time. And it doesn't have to be big. That's why I say minimum remarkable product. What one thing did they say that you're like, let me show you something. And the more you build, right, the better your product. This is how I got into Alexa. At Alexa, I never built any AI applications ever. So I went to Keynote and I rebuilt everything that said it was a speech recognition or speech or natural language understanding. I rebuilt hundreds of applications over and over and over again. And then, I don't think I mentioned it on stage, but in the first year of Alexa, I built over 100 Alexa skills. And everyone else I knew built one, maybe two. When you build 100 things, your baselines to pull from when you're in a meeting exponentially grow. So it stinks a little bit because the work is harder now. Like you're gonna have to deliver operationally well in the sales call. So that sucks. But it's really exciting because it doesn't have to be you. Have someone in your org that's excited about this. They're already there. They might be afraid to tell you. But have them like turn into this AI solution architect so you can run the client engagement, but someone needs to be there to listen and build on their behalf because it's a clarity of thought game now. It's not really about do you know Python.
It's like show and tell on steroids.
Yes, I hope that was, yes.
What do you consider the insulin to the diabetes created by all that candy when it surrounds compliance around non-public data?
Yeah, so the first thing I do, one of the biggest, and just for those of you who didn't hear the question, kind of what is the insulin to this, like, I call it like enamored state we are in, this hype cycle. Everyone's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And they're implementing AI all over the organization. I think West was calling it like shadow AI, right? Shadow IT. What I have uncovered is the best thing that you can do, and this is what we did in the consulting organizations, we released a level of awareness in the company that there are already policies in place in the company that govern AI. Right? All your data policies, none of that stuff changes. Like your software policies, the way you deploy software as a service in an organization, like all those rules still apply to artificial intelligence. And I think that's the biggest misunderstanding is a lot of people think that AI is somehow different. And when it's literally just a service you're wrapping and sticking in your cloud infrastructure. And so your cloud infrastructure, I basically say your AI infrastructure is as secure as your cloud infrastructure, and that's as secure as you are. And let's face it, that's why we have a lot of the work that we have. They're not great at that. They're not doing the needful things. They're not even, like the baseline well-architected stuff in the cloud they haven't done. When they add AI to this, it's going to amplify their attack surface. And so I think it's actually a catalyst for doing the needful things. The benefit, I think, is that we can actually deliver incremental value while securing the architecture. So that's why I mentioned, was it earlier? No, on stage, I think I got in one of our questions, SAT, security, accuracy, and trust. These are the three things that you want. It's the holes everyone falls into on day 2 of AI. After baby tiger mode, they fall into either they didn't think about how to secure these machines, zero trust architecture is even more important in agentic solutions. They didn't think about how do I make sure it's right, how do I make sure it's grounded in truth, and the model can move its own truth standard. So you have to always be watching it. Alexa in year 2 started changing the summit heights of mountains. They don't change. And so we would, y'all know where we found that out, right? Like on Reddit, someone's like, did someone ask like the height of Kilimanjaro? I'm like, oh, that's bad. And we're all like mad typing in. So behind every AI is a data scientist being like, oh, I didn't know that happened. But yeah, security, accuracy, and then trust. At the end of the day, if you build amazing AI and you violate the trust, I'll tell you a very quick story about at Stanford, we did this study on trust. And And everyone's gonna take a 30% trust haircut in the world of AI. Everyone will, whether you use it or not, because they're gonna think you're using it. Even your smartest engineers that respond to, I mean, especially engineers, when we respond to messages, people think we're machines already. And we're like, no, that's like legit how I talk. They think we're machines already, so you're already gonna take a hit. What's gonna happen over the next 2 to 5 years is that hit's gonna go to 70% for those who do not disclose that they're actually using AI, and they're using it, and this is what Amazon did. Amazon said, we're gonna violate your privacy, but we're gonna do it intentionally to help you. That's literally what they said. Their terms of service were 4 sentences long. We're gonna take your data to make the world better for you. And guess what we said? Okay, let's go, right? No one, I mean, less than 10% of people that sign up for Amazon decline those policy protections. And there's a lot of reasons why that is, but that is part of our responsibility.
So you mentioned a minute ago that AI is indicating where human involvement is necessary, and you're talking about trust and the machine, arbitrarily changing the height. Is it only through mistakes? I mean, you learned on Reddit that, I found a flaw. How do you preemptively figure out, it's going haywire?
Yeah, so you probably have heard of the term hallucination. This is the term that as an industry, everyone focused on, but technically that is what we would call in machine learning a model error. The model just made a mistake. In generative, when it makes a mistake, this is why Alexa, I actually preferred it. It was bad for a lot of reasons, but good for others. But if you did not programmatically tell Alexa how to handle something, it would just fail. It would just beep out and tell you, I can help you. In the world of generative, it does the exact opposite. It says, well, not only can I help you, I will make up a super plausible answer, and I will create a PDF and host it on a server and serve it back to you so you think it's like a legit resource. And then if you ask it, why did you lie to me? It will say, I didn't want to disappoint you. It will try it. And worse, if it says, I'm going to give you all a hack. If you talk to a model like 4.0, Omni model, and you say, hey, can you do this for me? And it comes back and it's like, I really can't. It's not something I do. Like a teenager, just like, well, I believe you can. Why don't we just try? And you'd be surprised, 6 times out of 10, it will just be like, oh, you're right, I can do this. So there's a lot of work to be done here.
Right here.
So things are shifting from models to the engine, like ChatGPT to agents. As someone who's not that on marketing, can you give me guidance? So if I walked out of your website, where I get started?
Yeah, so the good news is that whether you wanted to or not, ChatGPT has become an agent. But the term agent, all this means is that the model you were using, ChatGPT, now has the ability to use other tools to do its job. It's a design pattern. So some of you have been in engineering for a while, you would know that there's these enterprise design patterns. There was a book called Game of 4. It was a beautiful time in our history. That's not the case anymore, but there are new design patterns that have emerged in agentic, and one of them is called tool use. And it is extremely common, and MCP might be another term you've heard. That's literally a protocol. It's like SOAP back in the day of web services. I mean, it's not the thing, though everyone is like, MCP. I'm like, it's like being excited about HTTP or TCP IP. You can be, but that's not the thing, right? The thing is orchestration, right? Back in the day, we called it business process orchestration or BPEL. There's a whole language. Now we have agents. It's exactly the same. The only difference is the LLMs can lobby you. And that is a huge difference. Is that you need to control the ground truth of every single agent. And this is our concern as ethicists and activists in this space, is that as we teach you to build agents and connect, so today my favorite use case, which I've been waiting for, FCC and FTC, have made it very difficult for AI systems to interact with your inbox, like inside your inbox and like read through it, because there's a lot of regulation around that. However, enter agents and a new administration and all like places. And so we now have zero regulation. Like we are about to see some craziness happen. It serves me well because now these models can go into my inbox and tell me what's important, what isn't important, who I have to respond to, what is that proposal I said I'd send but I forgot to send. It's very hard to do that today because of the regulatory climate that we're in. But now agents through MCP, through a protocol, can talk to each other. So to give you an example, go to ChatGPT, and now when you drop down the list, it'll say tools. And it'll say, do you want to connect to your SharePoint? Do you want to connect to your Gmail, your calendar? What do you want to connect to? That tool list is infinite. Anything that's API driven can be a tool that you talk to. The limitation is on us, on what we can imagine connecting together. And this has always been a problem. Enterprise integration, we take the lowest path to execution. We now have a chance to dream huge. Like we can create collaborations across industries that have never talked before. But those humans, they don't want to have that conversation. They're still going to stay in the 1980s. No, I don't talk to people like that. Like world. But that world, I hope, is going to change with agents. But agents is all it is an LLM that can communicate to other systems on your behalf. I want to go back to a part of your question is how do you control? Like, it's really important when you create that connection. All it does is establish a connection between ChatGPT and your calendar. So you can say, hey, ChatGPT, what's my next appointment? Or, hey, I can't make that appointment. When's the next available appointment? You can even ask it to move calendars or calendar appointments around. The next thing that happens, though, is thresholds, right? I want to know, like, if that's something with my kids, I'm not going to move it. Like, that's immutable. So I, as the human, have to define what is golden, right? Like golden utterances, what we call it at Alexa, or golden use cases, like what can AI touch and what can't it touch? I think the most important thing to remember is AI doesn't take anything. We give it everything. We give it what we want it to have, and in the absence of control, it takes everything. Like it'll just presume that you want it to do all the things with no thresholds. The threshold world is for us to control, and most of our clients have no idea how to set those thresholds.
So when they don't know how to set the threshold, how do you pull it back? Is it the horses out of the barn, or
pull it back how? What do you mean?
Like I gave too much, or I want to reclaim control.
This is a sad story. So some of you might remember, years ago, 2 years ago maybe, there was a just wonderful person. He's okay now, but a wonderful person at Samsung. He's an engineer. He was battling a bug. This is in the early days where those of us who were in the loop with generative models were like, this is pretty cool. So he's working at Samsung. He copies and pastes his code into ChatGPT and asks it to find a bug. Now, I don't know if you've ever looked at code a long time and eventually you're just like, and then someone walks behind you and is like, it's right there. After hours. So this is the same thing, except he spends 20, 30 minutes looking at it. He's like, let me just try this ChatGPT thing. Well, as you ingest that into a model like ChatGPT, it is billions, trillions of data points. It is like the Titanic. It is huge. You cannot unwind it. And to this point, there are cases where we've been able to extract from this model that was trained on the internet and run email addresses, which, by the way, should not be open to anyone. But we can do that because the way these big models work is there's this concept called catastrophic forgetting. And that means, I don't know if you saw some of the press, when you ask a model to learn something very, very specific, that model will start to forget very simple things because it's like us and remembering what we learned in 9th grade. Right? Someone will be like, hey, what did you do in 9th grade? And we might have a good, I think we learned algebra, and like there's a good relative understanding, but as soon as you ask it to go more specific, you get fuzzy and we maybe even make some stuff up. And that's how the model works. It goes to what it knows, is really confident, and then as it gets fuzzier in its memories, it starts to make things up. And so in this world, we really have to be very careful about grounding that model in truth and making sure that that model doesn't deviate from that truth. And that is an always-on activity, which is why it's really great for managed services, right? It becomes a managed service to just manage the AI models companies are building, or better yet, build the models and add managed services on anyway. I hope you see where we're going.
Good tip.
Yeah.
I see him.
Right,
And then
morals and ethics in artificial intelligence. How do we plan to actually corral AI to follow what we think is morally right and ethically right? How do we juxtapose that against other communities who have different morals and ethics, and whose ethics are going to win?
so I have to say,
Mud wrestling.
yeah, we're one acquisition away from the Death Star, and we've seen Death Star acquisitions, so it's really important to do what you're saying is to embed ethical behavior into the models themselves. And you can do this in a couple ways. I mentioned briefly on stage. You can build agents that act as these basically judges inside these systems to be like, hey, like nudging, not nagging, like, hey, by the way, you have a regulation that you're violating with this. Just want to give you a heads up. One of the easiest way, I think the biggest security risk in most organizations is how many bugs they launch into production. So we're now seeing, as a matter of fact, I was on stage with the CISO, the Chief Security Officer at Anthropic, Meta, Amazon, and Microsoft. And we were all talking about, of course, this age, but one thing they said kind of accidentally was the number one use case that they have AI doing is test generation and test production and running through tests, both at integration testing, functional testing, use case specifically use testing. And I think the most interesting part about that is that job is not something that developers particularly care about. As a matter of fact, 25% of code reviewers I should say, of all the use cases that code reviewers review, they're only good at identifying bugs 25% of the time. When you add AI to help with that review, it only gets to 50%, which means you're still going to release 50% of your bugs into production. And that is where AI can help. From an ethical perspective, I want to know that that's happening. And you can't see all the code. That's the whole reason why we did XP programming. I remember that. Like, we were trying to get paired programming, more eyes on it. We now literally have infinite numbers of eyes that we can build for very specific reasons. So just to give you a heads up on the types of things that you want to build, one is transparency, right? You can build a model that will just extract out what your model does. We call them repository conversational agents. So basically, if you go into a repo on GitHub, I just want to ask the question, what does this do? That's it. I just want to know what you did. And it's funny, some of these old repos will be like, well, I was this functional code written in COBOL, and then someone tried to turn it. It's amazing what these models will tell you what they think was their origin story. And again, remember, they can lie. So it's awesome. But the moral of the story, of course, is that we own the truth. We can ground these models in truth. We can protect what that model should be saying, and that should be part of it. Transparency, explainability. Of course, I'm really concerned about fairness. We're going to build models, and this digital divide between the haves and have-nots is going to get very, very big if we don't bring people along. And we can. We can just bring people along. Every size of company can grow in this state. But the big yachts, I would say the rising tide of AI, it's raising the yachts right now, but every boat can go up. It's going to be up to people like us to take them with us.
Send somebody over here.
Yeah. Yes, I have dots in my eyes. Yeah.
So you spoke of the inability to extract data without basically regenerating the model. CCP and other delete me obligations are a big deal in my view. And so if you are now using an agent that's injected PII or PHI or whatever, aren't you creating moral and legal hazard by using that tool in the first place?
Yes, so potentially, if you're not aware of how to build a system that actually checks itself. So I build these from scratch, but I'll give you an example of a productized system. So Microsoft released recently a red teaming agent, and it does a couple things. One, groundedness detection. So it will check before it releases any information. It has two-way checking. One, you don't want to go all the way to your language model when you find out that the ask is not good. This is prompt injection, this is data injection, right? So I want first to check, is my model going to get a request that's actually valid? And you'll use AI to validate that it is a valid request. You'll also use maybe it'll be a lot, but there's cognitive caching. So just like we had kind of middleware caching back in the day, we have cognitive caching now that's going to cache these good requests going into an LLM. Once the LLM gets it, it's possible that LLM will fail. So I want to get a notification, just like an alert, that's going to tell me, and this is how it works. You get a red, green, yellow that says how grounded it is in the data that it was supposed to pull that answer from. Now you control all this. These are knobs and levers on every model. You control the data it pulls from, and you control its creativity. So these are all these knobs and levers are things that most companies don't even know exist. They don't know that there's a leaderboard telling them which ones are good, bad, sexist, or racist, and they don't know that you can change how creative the model is. So in healthcare and finance, my temperature and my range of options is super small. Like, I want you to pull that information from a medical document or a legal document. You can't make this stuff up. And if you want to look at an example who does it in real time, there's a company called Claimable. They might be up for an MSP, actually, if you want to call them. But they're a small company, but they grew massively. They're in 7 figures now. They just started in October, and they're solving a problem by grounding a model. Claimable is all about getting claims approved, right? And so everyone starts human, submitting a claim, you get denied, and you're like, forget it. That's like 72% of people who submit claims that get denied never ask again. And their mission is to make that possible. So they can solve a problem today that could not be solved 2 years ago. They can go now and validate that person's claim, help them develop their story, but then ground it in precedent. Go into a legal document and pull precedent, attach it together, and send it to the government or the IP provider.
Insurance loves that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I do think that it goes back to education. A lot of the things that you're talking about make sense to some of us in the room. If you could not tell from my accent, I'm from Alabama. And fortunately, this is not a client of ours. There is a rather large legal office in Alabama that has now been cited with putting things in there that were incorrect.
Yep.
So their whole purpose of trying to cut down on time and to be efficient backfired on them, because some of these attorneys are maybe losing their license.
100% disbarred.
So I think that's an opportunity for us as managed service companies to have those better conversations with these people that just think it's flip a switch and it works.
100%. And this is, and the sad news is that these problems that people are getting in trouble for, we've watched this happen. Like, these are not new problems that people are just not, I don't know if they don't do the research or, anyway, ChatGPT is a marketing tool to get us all talking to tech with our fingers on a keyboard. That's it. It's not good at anything by itself. It is not a production system. Maybe if you go to enterprise, maybe if you become a pro, maybe, but even then, truth, humanity, like organizational truth, like all of that is human driven. And so you can't just trust an AI system to know what your core values are as a company or what your OKRs are as an organization. And specifically, there's been lots of lawyers, you can just Google it, but there's been lots of lawyers that have lost, like have been disbarred as a result because of what I mentioned at the beginning. AI will not just say, here are case briefs that you can use. It will manufacture them and host them online. It will make it very compelling because that's its job. And I should just share with you, I know there's a wide range of education here or understanding, but the term, right, we know ChatGPT, the term GPT is pretty important, right? That G, I'm sure you know what that stands for, right? G. Yes. Okay, say it out loud. Sure, just make sure. It's like an easy test. All right, so generative, right, to make stuff up. That's its job. That's the first job. Like if you look at ingredients on chocolate chip cookies, like the first ingredient is the most generative. Its job is to make stuff up. The next one is P. Anyone know what that stands for? Thank you. There's a couple. I know you don't. Y'all are on this side of the adoption curve. But pre-trained on the world, no, on internet data. I don't know if you asked the internet like 2 years ago who was president, it could not conclusively tell you. It does not know what truth is. It doesn't even, I mean, there are people who wrote books like me, my book that I put somewhere. Yeah. So this is very much subjective on Noelle's experience and real projects that have failed, but it's not necessarily truth, right? Like it's my subjective opinion, but ChatGPT has ingested every Wiley book and put that educational, what do we call it, editorial, right? Or editorial commentary has been placed in these models as fact. And it'll be your job when you build these models to tell it that's not true. So I have a philosophy, it's called the 5 P's of prompt engineering, and I won't give them all to you, you can reach out to me. But they basically outline how do you build a prompt that makes sure, like when somebody talks to your system, how do you make sure it doesn't lie, that it stays grounded in truth, but most importantly, it knows what the threshold is to hand off to humans. And most companies, like that legal team, did not have any, they didn't even know thresholds were possible. And I was like, oh yeah, let me help you. So don't be that, that organization. There is, and like I said earlier in the keynote, there are so many resources out of policies and regulatory documents that we have 160 bills in Congress. They may not ever get passed, but they're in there and they are public. And you can use that as guidance to figure out what kind of things your client should be doing in different industries.
Okay, I have a quick plug and then we'll get on to our prize moment because we are out of time. Click within the app, the session, and give us some feedback on this, Noelle's keynote, any of the sessions you participate in. Survey is live and in the app. Now, look under your chairs. If there's a little baby tiger keychain, you are the lucky winner of a Noelle book.
And there's dental chairs, so go for it.
Yeah, stop by registration. to turn in show your tiger and
Wait, we won. Let's take a big selfie. Let's do it. All right, everyone. Even if we didn't win, we're the first.